Welcome to the Thought Leader Podcast. Get ready to hear powerful stories, unique perspectives, and bright ideas to impact the world in the areas of health, wealth, and relationships. We interview experts, authors, executives, entrepreneurs, and other industry thought leaders who share new strategies, practical tools, and best practices to accelerate your personal and professional results. This is the Thought Leader Podcast. And now, here's your host, Elena Fernandez.
Well, everyone, I am so happy to be with you today. And my guest is amazing. I just love the way Lawrence breaks things down for us in a way that we all get it and we all benefit. And let me tell you a little bit about Lawrence. He is amazing. He has been practicing clinical somatic education since 1990. That's like 3 decades. And what is this? Well, clinical somatic education, he's going to be talking about that with us today. Let me just say it's a holistic discipline to eliminate persistent pain efficiently and to correct stress-related disorders. So we'll learn more about that in a second. So help me welcome today to talk about how to be overwhelmed in minutes, Lawrence Gold. Hi, Lawrence.
Hi, Elena.
So good to have you here.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. So we have so much to talk about today, but I figured it would be great if you started telling us a little bit about yourself so that the audience gets to know you and that we know what we're talking about today.
Well, I hardly know where to start. A little bit about myself. Well, I'd say the center of my life has been personal growth and transformation since my teens, actually. I'm now 70. I started when I was 19 years old. I got Rolfed. You know what Rolfing is?
No.
Rolfing, okay. It's a form of somatic education that uses soft tissue manipulation and movement education specifically to develop a more efficiently functioning human being.
Mm.
And it uses the force of gravity to produce constant feedback into the person of the feelings of their state. That means their emotional, mental, and physical state, not for the mind to do something with, but for the feeling response automatically to recognize and release patterns of habitual and imbalance. Now, I know that's a big mindful, but that's where I started at age 19. And I've been on that path consistently since that time. So I've actually been an explorer of many different practices and disciplines. I got certified in massage in 1974. I did the S training in 1976. I joined an ashram in 1977. I've taken various forms of coursework since that time at the level of mind and consciousness, whereas Rolfing is an approach through the body. So without going too deeply into that rabbit hole, I've been around the block a few times. And my current work is a summation of everything that's come before in a unified form. But that means it isn't a smorgasbord. It's all been integrated into an integrated worldview.
Yeah. Amazing. That's a lot. And I cannot believe you're 70 years old.
Thank you.
Yes, I had no idea. But I do know, though, that there was a recent development in your life that helped you find this technique that we're going to be talking about today. So can you share that story with our audience so they know how you found out how to beat overwhelm? What was going on in your life at that moment?
Well, at the time, it was not about beating overwhelm. It was just a natural outgrowth of everything that had gone before, and various training lineages that I had explored, I found emphasized one or maybe sometimes two of the basic muscles of intelligence, those being attention, intention, memory, and imagination. And it just happened one day as I was taking a walk in the nature preserve. It just popped into mind that those four, which I had seen emphasized kind of individually in my previous courses of training and study, it occurred to me, hey, wait a minute, maybe these all fit together. And I began to experiment in myself. What would happen as I explored each of those four and then did them in combination? And one of the extraordinary things that I discovered is that when they are awakened and balanced with each other, meaning balanced in their intensity, how intensely I would feel them, and how they were hooked up with each other. When all four got hooked up, stress patterns disappeared just by hooking them up just like that. Rather than getting more and more intense as I added them up, the more I put them together, the more they lost their density or their grip. And I began to come free spontaneously. Now it happens that as I joined the Thought Leader program, I was called upon, or I called myself to formulate a talk, and I had to come up with a story that illustrated what I've been talking to you about in this session together. And one of the most recent changes in my life was my move from my home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to outside Portland, Oregon. And it was just, what a roller coaster. My goodness. I mean, one challenge, one crisis, one breakdown after another. And now I had developed procedures based on those four muscles of intelligence, and so I applied them in myself. I was in a state of overwhelm when I had to leave my home in Santa Fe because the owner of the rental property wanted it for his daughter and her family. This was in 2020 during the major worst part of the COVID pandemic, and I was having to leave my home as winter was setting in and during a housing shortage when everybody was hunkering down in isolation, seemingly the absolute worst time to have to relocate.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt.
And I was starting to wake up in the dark in the morning with my heart racing because as time was closing in on the deadline, I hadn't located a place to live. Homelessness looked like it was my future. Well, I couldn't change the situation, but I could change how it was landing in me. So I applied what I had been developing, and that's how I kept my boat on an even keel, how I weathered the process, how every time things piled up on me, and I haven't told you the mass of the story, it was one thing after another, I disarming the overwhelm, and that became my story for the TEDx talk, which I early titled that How to Beat Overwhelm in Minutes, which I think I'm retitling How to Turn the Tables on Overwhelm in Minutes, the gift. Because in that talk, I'm going to give the audience a direct experience of one of the procedures that I use to disarm overwhelm so they could feel it and not just think about it or have some ideas or be told something. Immediate personal experience.
Yeah.
How's that?
I love that. And you know, do you find that in moments of overwhelm or in moments of adversity is when we're given opportunities to find, discover, or use tools that will help us and help others?
Well, that's the formula for desperation.
Yeah.
Okay, I think most people who go through crises like this, they try to cope by managing the circumstances. That doesn't work very well. It's iffy, and often there are a lot of moving parts. Whereas if we do it by changing ourselves, we have immediate access. And then if we have the resources, if we know what and how to do it, then we can do it. But people who don't have that already in hand, I think they're in dire straits.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have been if I didn't have what I had developed.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so you mentioned that you have an approach, and I would like to know what the difference is between this approach that you're talking about, because maybe people are thinking, well, you said that you changed how the situation landed. Is that positive thinking, or is that the law of attraction, or is that strategic thinking? Is that therapy? What is it, and what's the difference of what you're talking about?
Okay. Well, just using examples that you gave, positive thinking tends to overlayer positive thoughts on top of negative emotions. Well, another name for that is pretense. And one of the phrases that's used is fake it till you make it. This is not that. Instead of trying to impose positive thinking on top of a stress condition, we undermine the stress condition. Undermine means that it loses its grip. It dissolves. And a good outcome for the kind of procedure that I teach, the one I'd be sharing is called the Gold Key Release. A good outcome is you forget what the trouble was. It loses its grip so thoroughly, it takes an effort to remember what it was that was bothering you. So you do that without having to change the circumstances at all. It's all done by intervening in our own mental, emotional, or attentional, intentional memory and imagination process. Law of attraction. Well, law of attraction is, in my opinion, is not very well named. I prefer the name the law of resonance.
Oh.
Because whatever we bring to the party, or whatever somebody else brings to the party, other people start to resonate with that naturally. It's kind of like when you see a person yawn and it makes you want to yawn. In fact, just saying it now might have made you feel something in your yawning muscles.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
And so what happens is what we bring to the party tends to color the interaction. And if we're in a negative state, it tends to evoke a negative feeling in the others, and people want to get away. Sure. In the situation of danger, people don't want to hang around. And danger, the fear feeling, is what alerts people. So that the resonance that we feel with people in that situation is a signal, an uh-oh signal. So resonance makes all the difference. A person who's really brilliant will bring out the brilliance in others. So that's a real summary way of comparing it to the law of attraction. Now, one of the features or instructions of the law of attraction is when you're in some sort of negative state is switch your attention to something that makes you feel positive. That's not all that different from positive thinking. It's trying to extricate yourself from something that holds on to you like Gorilla Glue.
Yeah.
So better if we could find out how we are habitually, automatically reinforcing the stress condition in ourselves. And it's not a matter of thinking and then mind over matter. It's a feeling recognition of the same kind as if you're gritting your teeth and you notice that you can stop gritting your teeth.
Absolutely.
You're tensing, if you're clenching your hand in a fist and they go, oops, geez, this doesn't feel real good in my hand all the time. I'm gripping the steering wheel hard on my car on a winding road through a mountain pass, at high speed, right? You know that feeling, and you're gripping the steering wheel. Well, you know what? That's not helping all that much. And if you notice it, you can immediately dispel the grip.
Mhm.
You can release the grip. But the problem with that is that it's generally based on habitual conditioning. And so the release that way tends to be temporary. But
Yeah.
when one reaches it at the level in themselves where the reaction is rooted, it's felt. And when that releases, any one of those, attention, intention, memory, or imagination, if any one of those loses its intensity, all of them lose their intensity. If you do them all at once, it wipes it out so thoroughly, it's hard to remember what it was.
Wow. It's a like control alt delete.
There you go. That's right.
Wow. Mind blown. That's amazing. And so in what way is this approach more familiar to self-awareness or growth or transformation?
Okay. Well, personal growth and transformation are about changing habits.
Mm-hmm.
Habits are grounded or are memory coupled with an intention. You have a memory and then you intend to be right, to continue that memory. You behave in a certain way and you have your attention on it. Otherwise, you couldn't do anything with it. And generally, a person has a preferred situation, which is what they're imagining for themselves. So remember, I dissolved my own mind with that one. Remind me of the question.
So, so now that we know that it's different from the law of attraction and it's
Yeah.
different from positive thinking, and you talked about the law of resonance. So, is it familiar to self-awareness, growth, and transformation?
Oh, yeah.
As you
That's
talked
great. That's it.
about,
So the methods of self-awareness and transformation are generally about memory, but they don't have a handle on the other three, or maybe they have one, but they don't have all four, and they don't have any deliberate integration of the ones they're working with. They're like working with one, they're working with the other. So the typical techniques are partial.
Mhm.
If the hook that keeps people trapped is lodged in what they're happening to address, it's successful. But if it isn't, then it becomes a long haul for people within the confines of one of those disciplines.
Yeah,
All four are essential. All four are operating in all of us every moment that we live.
yeah,
So try to, let's say a person has a car with spark plugs that aren't firing right. Okay, they haven't been replaced for a long time. The engine is misfiring. And they change one of the spark plugs, but they don't change all four. So it's kind of catch as catch can
yeah.
that they solve that misfiring problem. You want to get it sorted out, replace all four or clean all four. This is a way of cleaning the spark plugs of our mind.
Wow, that's a great analogy and memorable. I love that. Wow. And I think our audience would probably benefit from going into these components and defining each one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, instead of defining it to the mind, let's create a direct experience.
let's
And
do it.
okay, so wherever you are, just notice something in the room and put your attention on it and hold it there until it steadies. And let it go. So what you did was move your attention to something. You located something. Attention is the locator. And that's all it does. Attention is not the same as understanding. Attention just locates.
Yeah.
Intention is the mover. It's the push or the pull or the move around or toward or away. It's the mover. And intention has a certain amount of horsepower, a certain intensity. And we have certain tendencies of intention. That's our habits. By tendency, I mean a proneness to be a certain way. So that's the intention side. So locate that item that you found. Do that now. Hold your attention there. And let it go. So what you did there, you had to intend. You had to intend to locate what you located before.
Absolutely.
So that's the combination how intention integrate. But you also, do it again. This time, don't look, just remember the thing you looked at.
Done.
You had to put your attention there. You had to intend to remember it. So actually, all three were happening.
Because I located it in my memory, right? Or in my mind.
Yeah, you located it in your memory. Now, it also happens that in the moment in which you recalled it, you actually imagined it. So you had an image.
Yep.
If you don't have some sort of experience, when you call something up from memory, you didn't remember it. You'd forgotten it.
Yeah.
So all four work together. And they don't work together one at a time. They work together simultaneously. It happens. I had to individuate them to take you through the little experience here, because language is linear. It's one thing at a time. But you found that you combined all four as a very natural thing. So the muscles of intelligence are as natural and familiar as can be to people. However, not necessarily equally up to speed.
Yeah.
So people's intentionality may be weak. They don't have much horsepower. They're not much discipline. Or their memory may be spotty, which means they can't hold their attention on anything for long because they can't stick with the memory of what they were putting their attention on.
Yeah.
Or people's imagination may be faulty and they go through life based on what they think they know about reality. And they lack foresight. They have a mechanical orientation to life, and they're generally very opinionated and dogmatic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're a proponent that imagination needs to be coupled with reality.
Well, here's how it works. Imagination is the incoming channel for new experience. If it isn't new experience, it's not imagination, it's memory. Imagination is like the mouth. It comes into the mouth and you chew it up by putting your attention on it and seeing its parts, and then you swallow it and goes into memory. So imagination becomes memory. And if you want to remember anything, what you actually do is imagine it. What's your phone number? Remember it to yourself. Well, you just imagined it.
Yeah.
And if you want to form a memory, how do you do it? You imagine it repeatedly. You keep repeating your phone number or your friend's number that you just got until it goes from imagination into memory. You did it as an act of intention by putting your attention on it. So back to reality again.
Yeah.
What people call reality is what they remember. And generally, whatever persists and seems to stick around without our trying to make it stick around, we for reality. If it persists, it's got votes that it's reality. If it evaporates, it looks like something you imagined.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, this is great. And you call this the faculties of intelligence, right?
I've used different words. I use the word muscles of intelligence also, because you can strengthen a muscle and you can strengthen these faculties of intelligence.
Yeah.
Muscles work in coordination with each other, and these muscles of intelligence work together in coordination. And
Yeah.
muscles may or may not be equally or evenly developed. If they're evenly developed, then you have more access to your strength. Half
Mhm.
of strength is actually coordination. Look at the baseball pitcher who winds up and then throws a 90-mile-an-hour pitch. He winds up by bringing the arm back and leaning on his back leg. And then in the throw, the arm comes forward, his weight comes to the front, and the ball goes 90 and lands in the catcher's mitt with a loud smack. Coordination is what gives the pitcher power. So
Mhm.
half of strength is coordination. You can't do it just by working on a muscle. And we can't do it just by working on one of the muscles of intelligence by itself either. You can get a take on it, the way you can get a sense of a muscle. But in terms of performance, integration is the name of the game.
I love that. And so they work together as a unit.
Mm-hmm.
And what has this done for you?
Well, it saved my ass as I was going through the COVID pandemic. It's also enabled me to get deep insight into things. There's a procedure that's especially suitable for getting insight into relationships. It's called the middle way memory matrix. Now, the middle way, in case some people are familiar with the term, is not moderation in all things. The middle way is non-biased toward any extreme. It includes all, but is not biased. So it like rests in the middle and where fairness is. And this one has enabled me to get way deep insight into difficult situations. If you don't know what to do about something, for example, you have two alternatives, but you can't really get a handle on which way to go. This procedure enables you to compare the two against each other and against intending them one at a time or refusing them one at a time, intending them together or throwing them both out. So that's one thing it's done for me. Here's another. People often, you've heard the term self-sabotage.
Absolutely.
All righty. Well, this is pathos in the human life because people are full of contradictory impulses, but they're working in the background. They're not aware of them explicitly. And so even though they want something, they have pros and cons, and they don't know what all the cons are, what the pros are. They don't know which one is more important, the pros or the cons. So this procedure I call the inverter, because it takes an item that we're looking at and gets us to look at it in all directions, gets us able to look at it in terms of the ways we feel positive toward it and the ways we feel negative toward it. And it takes us through it in such a way that it surfaces the unconscious material. We get a good look at what it was that was running the show.
Yeah.
And that good look enables us now to get proportion, to get perspective, and to dissolve self-sabotage. It opens the way for a clear decision. It eliminates confusion. I've used these liberally myself. Had to, because I've been on cutting edge in my line of work, which is called clinical somatic education. People come to this work to get out of pain that has persisted despite therapy. And this is not, work is not well known. It's like we've got in 9 billion people on earth, there are fewer than 1,000 practitioners.
Wow.
All over the world. And so I've had to use all of my resources to do two things: to create procedures in my clinical work that were not covered in our training, develop new procedures for stuff that is not responding well to therapy. And the other is to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. And yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay. Well, when you talk about pain, is it physical pain or emotional pain?
Yes. It turns out that, well, anybody who's been in chronic pain, they're in emotional pain. It can go anywhere from feeling depressed to absolute desperation. Now, clinical somatic education actually undermines the physical pains, but the procedures involving the muscles of intelligence eliminate emotional pain, stress patterns, confusion. So the answer is yes. They both come out of the same field, but working with the muscles of intelligence is a major advance. It goes beyond just muscles, movement, and pain, injuries.
Incredible. And so you've been mentioning how it worked for you in some examples, but what if someone is listening right now or viewing and saying, well, how will that work for me? What would you say to them?
Nothing like experience. Here's what I've noticed. Whenever people are confronted with something new, the first thing they try to do is to liken it to something they're already familiar with. New comes in through the imagination channel. They don't know what it is. They just know there's something going on here, but I don't understand it. So it isn't just like Walt Disney imaginings of fantastic characters. It's also, say, Edison's, how do I make a light bulb? Any creative work whatsoever, but it comes in through the imagination channel, but it comes in without information about it. It's raw experience. Meeting somebody new for the first time, you don't know this person. Your attention is on them, you're watching, their behaviors show things about them, and it's called getting to know a person. Getting to know, that's back in the memory channel. It comes in through the imagination or new experience channel and lands in the memory channel. Experience, direct experience, is the means to understand this. Otherwise, people tend to liken this to something else, as you did at the beginning of our conversation. How is this like law of attraction or positive thinking? Unfortunately, this work is so different from what people know. Oh, here's another one, the clinical somatic education, which has a name, Hanna Somatic Education, after Thomas Hanna, the developer. My website up on Yahoo back in '96, they decided what the description was, and they said it's a variant of chiropractic. No way. It is not manipulation by somebody by somebody else. It's called education because there's a teaching and there's an absorption and a practice, direct experience, and now a person can be said to know something about it because they experienced it directly. So one way a person can get a direct experience is via my YouTube channel, where I have easily over 1,000 video entries. And some of them are clinical somatic education that can be seen, and there's instruction in certain action patterns that people can use to do it for themselves rather more slowly. And for the work involving the muscles of intelligence, which the four together I call the tetra seed. TETRA means four, and SEED like a plant. Those four form the seed of our experiences. And I put the Gold Key Release up on my YouTube channel so people can turn it on and follow along and do it.
That's very generous of you. Very generous of you, Lawrence, because it's really powerful. And I'm sure that we're going to experience it here today. But before we do that, you talked about how these four muscles are integrated and what happens when they are integrated. But what about when they're not integrated and when they feel inaccessible? What does that feel like so that, everyone that's listening and watching today can identify whether they're integrated or not?
Trapped, TRAPPED. People feel trapped in experiences. They feel entangled in something that seems not to be their own doing. Well, the circumstance is always partially, at least, part of our undoing, but it's not so easy to change circumstances. Much easier to change our own way of handling, receiving those experiences. And when a person does that, they no longer feel trapped. It's a release, the gold key, release. So if a person is struggling, you can bet your bottom dollar that one or more of those muscles of intelligence is not accessible to them. They don't even know it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the external world that's at fault. Well, it's understandable that we would feel that way, but a little investigation reveals that, my gosh, I've been holding this stress pattern in my memory or in my intention, or I've been out to lunch with regard to attention or imagination. Those spark plugs weren't firing real well. They were fouled. Or maybe the electrical signal, the electrical voltage wasn't getting through, and they didn't know it. Guess what? The problem was residing in their own conditioning.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a way to get at it.
And this works in any area of life, right?
Yeah, that's been my experience. I've yet to find an exception.
And how many people do you, in all of your decades of experience, how many people have you worked with? And what are some of the different situations that they've overcome or by using this approach?
Well, I can think of two right offhand. I had a client who had what we might call an abusive childhood. Without going into all the details, she was very volatile emotionally, tending to go into crying over the most mild stimulus at times. So I worked with her over time, and what happened, she ceased to have that pattern. Her whole disposition changed. She became sunnier. Her appearance changed. That took a bit of time because there was a lot to unravel. Each time we did one of the procedures, the result was immediate, but there was more to go. And I never had to repeat the same material. That's typical. It does not need repeating. Other stuff that hasn't been handled, yeah, that's going to come up. And if it's there, you clean it up. So that was one of my clients. Wow. On another occasion, I got a phone call. The phone rang, and the guy had found my number on the website, and he was, at that time, in the midst of a panic attack. Mm-hmm. His heart was racing, you could hear it in his voice when he spoke, and his breathing was disturbed. And he was even afraid to do the gold key release. I said, well, it's entirely under your control. Nothing's going to happen that you don't yourself do, so you can control it. So he felt more at ease about that. We did the gold key release. In about 20 minutes, it was gone. He was back on an even keel.
Mm. That is so powerful. 20 minutes, that's all it took.
Yeah.
And would you say that that reduces the likelihood of a future panic attack?
I haven't heard from him again, and it worked the first time. So I figure if I didn't hear from him, it must have shifted him in a durable way.
Amazing. Amazing. What about for work-related situations, or maybe something that has to do with leadership? Because you know that the listeners are thought leaders. And so how does this work for someone who's looking to be maybe more productive, have more success in their career, or more impact in their work?
You've been listening to the Thought Leader Podcast. At Thought Leader, we help experts, authors, executives, and entrepreneurs land the most credible and authority-building stages in the world to spread their message and their impact. If that's you, visit thought-leader.com and click on Schedule a Session to get started. Now back to this episode of the Thought Leader Podcast.
Well, look, I use the word productive here. In order to be productive, a person has to have clarity. What's in the way of clarity? Mental noise, stress, emotional states, and interference from other people. Probably more than that, but that's enough. So
I will do it.
let's say a person has a project. Here was a project. Let's say they have a writing project of one sort or another, but they don't have a handle on the topic. It was assigned to them. The project was assigned. Well, I have to frame this well to keep clarity for our listeners. I'll say it this way: that if we're using the 4 muscles of intelligence, each of those muscles of intelligence can be split the way a prism splits a beam of light into its colors. So, to use as an example, memory involves persistence. If it doesn't persist, it's not a memory, it's gone. To form a memory involves reinforcing the thing you're remembering. If you don't reinforce it, it stays feeble. It's not easily accessible to memory. It has a pattern. Every memory has a pattern, either a pattern of relationships, or if it's an object, the shape of the object and how it works has a pattern. So we have remembering, persisting, reinforcing, and a pattern. And it has a state of activity. If there's no activity whatsoever, it doesn't exist for all intents and purposes. In fact, in science, there's a concept absolute zero, which is as cold as anything in the universe can get. No motion, no energy going in or coming out. In effect, it can't interact with anything. It doesn't exist. There's no way to measure it, to notice it's there, because to notice it's there, it's got to send some sort of signal out, light or sound or something. So we have remembering, persisting, reinforcing, persisting, pattern, and activity. The other 3 have corresponding harmonics that are split out. So intention has movement, becoming, intention and becoming. There's no becoming, there's no intention. Even the intention to keep something the way it is involves some sort of effort on your part to affect the circumstances surrounding that thing you don't want to change. So you're affecting the course of its becoming. Tendency is the line along which something develops. Gravity is a tendency, and the line is toward the earth. So intention involves a tendency. And intensity. So every tendency has a degree of intensity. Earth's gravity has an intensity that moves things at a certain rate of acceleration when falling. So we have intention, movement, becoming, tendency, and intention. So that's attention and that's a memory and intention I've just gone through. Should I go through the other 2?
I would love that.
I think I will.
Yeah.
Attention. Its harmonics are coherence. Coherence is things holding together, not flying apart. If you're regarding anything and it flies apart in every direction, you can't follow it with your attention. It's got to be coherent. It can have a certain degree of randomness, but it's got to have some sort of a location in order to put our attention on it. Focusing. If it's out of focus, you can't see the details. And if it's totally out of focus, you don't know what the heck it is. You can't, and if it's even more out of focus, you don't even know where it is. You don't know where its center is. So attention requires focusing and coherence. Now, people don't think about this because we're born with eyes that have a focusing reflex, so it happens automatically. And what that focusing produces is distinctness. If there's no distinctness, you can't pay attention to it. If we can't distinguish something from what's around it, it's like a black cat in a coal bin at midnight. So attention requires distinctness, a certain sufficient degree of distinctness, and involvement. As soon as you put your attention on it, you're involved with it. A matter of degree, how involved, but you're involved. In the dating scene, if people are in a club or something and they see somebody else and they put their attention on that person, immediately they feel something. And if the person gives attention back, they're involved. Doesn't mean they're romantically involved, but they're involved in some degree of getting acquainted. So attention requires coherence, focusing, distinctness, and involvement. If there's no involvement, you can't even find it in your attention. So each of those four can be split out like the beams of color in light going through a prism. The last one, the fun one, is very paradoxical. It's imagination. Now, I said earlier that in order to experience something and you have your attention on it, if you know what it is, you have memory. And if it's memory, it's not imagination, it's memory. It's stored knowledge. So imagination is inherently about something that is not yet defined. In fact, you can't even experience anything in your imagination until you have at least a short-term memory of it so you can hold your attention on it. So there's an undefined quality to things coming in the imagination. Likewise, there's an equilibrium or a stability to it. If it's changing all the heck all over the place, you can't form a memory of it.
Yeah.
So imagination involves undefined equilibrium. Now, this is something that can blow the mind away, and it's actually the escape hatch from experience. The next item is originating. To originate something is to bring it into existence from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what Walt Disney felt the first time he drew Donald Duck. Here you are, you're sitting listening to a conversation here, and suddenly now you're seeing Donald Duck in your mind. Well, you have a memory of Donald Duck, but Walt didn't.
Mm.
In fact, Donald Duck didn't look at the beginning the way he looks now. Donald Duck was new, unknown, no memory, but he originated it. It was original.
Yeah.
If it isn't original, it's memory, not imagination. You can use imagination to call up a memory, but it's still imagination, which is a space for receiving some kind of experience. It's undefined, and it's a state of equilibrium, not disequilibrium or feeling off balance. Those are noise factors. When a person is under stress, they have a lot of trouble imagining anything else.
Mm.
Stress comes out of a combination of a memory and intention and attention on that whole mess. And when it's too intense, it drowns out imagination, and a person can have no foresight, no insight, no new understanding. So a balance between imagination and memory is required.
Yeah.
So the origination movement involves a space into which something can come. That's the undefined equilibrium. I know those are $100 words, but if you can feel what you felt when I say the words undefined equilibrium, your mind can't land on anything. It's like, what is that? Precisely. That's the open space into which understanding can emerge.
Mm.
So if you feel like you didn't understand it, actually you did, and that was it. As I said, the imagination channel is paradoxical. It confounds the mind. And after originating comes apprehending, which is to catch something. If it's an action of imagination to catch it, and that's what enables it to drop into memory. If you have a fleeting image in your mind and it disappears, guess what? You don't know what it is you just imagined. It's gone. So the imagination channel is both the incoming channel and the outgoing or dissolution channel. It's where the release of the gold key release occurs. And you'll hear imagination is the last step of the gold key release. It involves imagination.
Yeah.
And it doesn't involve imagining something new. It actually involves the reverse. It involves stopping imagining.
Mm.
So that's how the 4 muscles of intelligence can be split out as if white light through a prism into the colors. Now, that was a long-winded and necessary explanation to how to get information about something that's completely unknown. We take it and we look at each of those expressions of the muscles of intelligence. So just to use Donald Duck as an example here, we might say, imagining Donald Duck, intending Donald Duck, remembering Donald Duck, attending to Donald Duck, undefined equilibrium, Donald Duck. Boop, dissolves it. However, Donald Duck moving, Donald Duck becoming, Donald Duck persisting, Donald Duck reinforcing Donald Duck. Get a stronger, more vivid Donald Duck. Coherent attention on Donald Duck. Bringing Donald Duck into focus. Donald Duck distinct. The pattern of Donald Duck. The tendencies of Donald Duck. Originating Donald Duck. Involvement with Donald Duck. Donald Duck activity, or Donald Duck in a state of activity. Donald Duck's intensity, especially when he gets angry and
That's exactly what I imagined or remember it.
yeah. Well, your imagination recalled the memory.
Yep.
And apprehending Donald Duck. So you could take anything unknown and you can put it through your paces, looking at it in terms of each of those expressions. You can do it on a one-off, the way we just did for brevity here. There's a procedure which uses what I call the tetraseed awakening integration matrix. A lot of $100 terms.
Yeah.
It's the matrix. It includes all of those muscles of intelligence and their expressions. And by that means, we can call up stuff that we didn't know we knew, and we can get insight into the thing beyond what we had available before, just by doing that process of looking at that item in terms of each of those. So if we're at work and we're given a project, like design a new watch that can do everything but light a pipe. Read Apple Watch. Okay, now what? No, Steve Jobs was a visionary. He imagined like crazy.
Yeah.
Einstein was a visionary. He used thought experiments. He said imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagination includes everything. Knowledge is limited.
Mm-hmm.
And each of them made advances in their fields. And I used it in my work of clinical somatic education.
Yeah.
I took on some very, 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 very difficult problems and developed a solution for those problems. Does that answer the original question?
Absolutely. And one thing that came to mind as you were explaining the different components of these four, I like that how you call it tetra seed. And I want to find out why seed. But the question is, when you're talking about imagination, and I was thinking about worry. How is worry like imagination? Because you said that it doesn't, when you imagine it, it doesn't really have a negative charge to it. That's what I understood. So where does it worry come into place? And then there was something else, but I think it'll come back after this.
Okay. Well, if you're worried, not only are you imagining, but you're basing what you're imagining on memory.
Mm.
Whether it's a memory of what somebody told you or your past experience, worry is grounded in memory hijacking imagination and having attention fixated, stuck, persistent on that memory and triggering intentions. The intention to correct, to struggle, to get away. So memory is a combination, again, of all four. The problem being, though, that remember that imagination is what calls memory into existence. Memory just makes it easier to imagine something. The more memory you've got of it, the stronger the memory, the easier it is to remember it. It's because it's more accessible to reimagining it, to calling it up.
Mm-hmm.
So memory is a dysfunction of the four muscles of intelligence. Memory has hijacked imagination.
Wow.
And people have lost control of their intention to move their attention out of the hijack.
Absolutely. So that's like a trigger as well.
Yeah, that's right. The trigger triggers a memory.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And yeah, and I remembered what I was going to ask you. What about dreams? Where do dreams, as when we are asleep, where does that fit with imagination?
Well, it's very interesting. There's a couple of different ways to go with it. Let's try the most accessible way first. Dreams are always unexpected. They're new when you're having a dream. Not only that, but our typical reactions are not there in a dream. We can do things that we wouldn't dare do in the waking state. Dreams are a strong imagination dominant experience, not memory dominant, imagination dominant. Now, dreams can be interpreted. Unfortunately, most interpretation is symbolic. It's unfortunate because sometimes a cigar is just a cigar in a dream. It's not some sort of symbol. So I developed a way to get dreams to reveal their hidden meaning. And the way you do it is you take any element of the dream, and an object in the dream, incident, a person, so it doesn't matter what it is, and you run it through the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a simplified way of going about it. And I don't expect people to remember all of this stuff. Just so you know, the matrix has been published and you can just print it out and use it. But in terms of dream work, each of those muscles of intelligence with its expressions have a different flavor. So if you take an object from the dream and you look at, say, the harmonics of imagination, one of them will be stronger than the others. It may be that apprehending is the strong one, or it may be not knowing what the heck this is the strong one. what we do is go through each of the harmonics of those muscles of intelligence and find which one is the strongest. And that way we can get one from each of the muscles of intelligence, one expression each. And then we can hook them up together and look at them in connection with each of the others in all possible combinations. That's a series of steps.
Mm.
And that produces a feeling. You get a feeling. At that point, you might choose another item in the dream and do the same thing. Let's say the dream involves two people, and those two people are obviously in a relationship of some sort with each other. But what the heck does that have to do with me? Well, I'll tell you, the dream is you, even if the person appears to be not. Guess where it's coming from? It's coming at least through you.
Yeah.
So if we look at those elements of the dream, just applying one from each of the muscles of intelligence, one expression, we get a feeling. And as we combine them, suddenly the whole significance of the dream comes into focus. And we can put our attention on it. And we can feel how it involves us. It becomes very distinct.
Wow.
And therefore, no symbols are needed. Just use the dream, put it through the tetraseed awakening dream matrix.
Wow. So powerful. I didn't even know that, but it just came to my awareness because these are mysteries that I didn't know had a solution and could be solved. So you are absolutely brilliant. So I would like for you to talk about the gold key release.
Okay. One afternoon, during a break, working with a client at an intensive, I felt that she had emotional material going on. And in the clinical work, if a person has a strong emotional state, it's a stress pattern in them. And that stress pattern is noise in their attention that interferes with the speed with which we can typically get results, which, by the way, is unbelievably fast to people who think they know how long therapy should take. I generally don't even like to say how fast it happens because I don't want to trigger incredulity in people. Let's just say it's pretty quick. And during the break, I got curious because I hadn't yet developed the gold key release. I just started finding the stress pattern as I was feeling it in myself, and I followed a trail of breadcrumbs, so to speak. What would it take to cause a person to feel stuck with a certain experience? Well, first thing is they've got to know what the experience that they're stuck with is. So they have to be able to give it a name. They have to be able to feel it in themselves, even poorly, even crudely. They have to have some feeling. They have to have some sort of intention about it for it to be a stress pattern. Stress always wishes something was different. There's some sort of intention, and they must be refusing something. They must believe it's true. And they have to touch the place in themselves where the memory and the imagination that are holding it in place live. So I worked out the very first form of the gold key release by following that trail of breadcrumbs. It worked, but it wasn't anywhere near as elegant as it is now. It's easier to use, produces faster results. So that's how I developed the gold key release. I follow the trail of breadcrumbs of what it would take for a stress pattern to be stuck, to feel real to a person and stuck.
Hmm.
And I used it with her. And then I've used it with myself plenty, believe me.
And what were the results?
What was expected, the charge dissipated, calm was restored, mental clarity, ease, and later I found spontaneous right action in the area that I'd run the gold key release before. What does that mean, spontaneous right action? It
Yeah.
means I didn't have to premeditate it. I didn't have to plan it. I had cleaned the area up so much that my immediate natural response was a satisfying and satisfactory response, spontaneous right action.
And how does the spontaneous right action work?
Automatically. Next time you get into that kind of situation and you are involved, you'll notice, hey, I didn't used to handle this way. This feels so easy, and it turned out well. Clean it up first. Then next time you face it, it's going to be a completely different kind of experience. Should I tell you a little story?
I would love a little story.
Okay. So I did a gold key release course. I delivered a gold key release course online, and one of the participants was scheduled to be the mistress of ceremonies of a big event. She was going to be on stage at the podium, and she told me her biggest fear was that she would forget a person's name that she was introducing and feel humiliated.
Yeah.
So we ran the gold key release on to a good result, which means it was dissolved, just gone. And then a week or two later, when we had another session, she told me what happened. She was on the stage, she forgot the person's name, and she laughed, and she laughed, and the whole audience was laughing with her, and they had a nice laugh, and it was fine, and it was fun, and the thing went smoothly.
Yeah.
Spontaneous right action.
Fantastic. So are we going to explain to everyone how to do the gold key release at home?
Explain? No. Experience? Yes.
Experience. Yes.
So I like to say the gold key release is the most fun you can have without laughing. The laughing comes later. Shall I launch into it with everybody now?
Let's do it. I'm ready. Are you?
Okey-doke. All right. So the gold key release, I'm going to give you some preliminary orientation. I'm going to be delivering steps to you. I'm going to be stating steps to you that will touch you in places and sensitize you to what's happening in you, the way the sensitive fingertips of a safecracker reveal the combination to the lock. All you need to do is listen, get the meaning, and feel whatever comes up. You can't get it wrong. It's there to bring up what's there. All you need to do is notice what it comes up, what it feels like, and then let it go. You don't need to remember anything. So you can't get it wrong, and you don't need to remember anything. I'm going to be using the key words, your item. And what I'll have you do in a moment is identify something that has been bothering you in life. Choose something of moderate intensity, not some feeble thing. Use something with some grip in you. On the other hand, don't choose something world-shaking and severe, because right now you're not familiar with the gold key release, and it may distract too much of your attention. So choose something moderate. And I'm going to leave a few moments right now for you to select something from your memory that bothers you. Do that now. Okay. Now give it a name, a brief name, just a couple of syllables or a few maybe. Do that now. As we go through the gold key release, I'm going to be using the words your item. Wherever you hear the words your item, substitute the name you gave to your item. Ready? We begin. Your item, your item. Feeling your item. Notice where you feel it in you. Feel the intensity of its intensity. Your item. Feel the intensity of its activity. Your item. Feel the pattern of its activity. Your item. Intending your item. Intending your item. Intending refusing. Refusing. Refusing your item. Refusing your item. Your item. Your item. It matters. Your item. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your item. It matters. Your item. Feel how your item involves you. Feel how your item involves me. It's true. It's true. It's untrue. It's untrue. It's untrue. It's true. It's untrue. It's untrue. It's true. It's true. Remembering. It's true. It's true. Remembering your item. It's true. Remembering. It's untrue. It's untrue. Remembering your item. It's untrue. Remembering your item. It's true. Remembering your item. It's untrue. Allow how remembering involves imagining. Imagining. Intending, imagining. Imagining your item. Your item. intending, imagining. Intending, intending. Your item, your item. Your item. Imagining, imagining. Remembering, imagining. Imagining your item. Your item. Remembering, imagining. Remembering, remembering. Your item, your item. Your item. Imagining, imagining. Attending, imagining. Imagining your item. Your item. Attending, imagining. Attending, attending. Your item, your item. Your item. Imagining, imagining. Imagining your item. Your item. Your item. Stop imagining. Stop stopping. That completes the gold key release.
Wow. That was powerful. And I definitely feel more ease. That's exactly when I thought about the different outcomes that you had talked about. That's the one that really came to me, to my whole awareness, to my whole body, mind, and soul. So thank you so much tonight. I'm glad that everyone is going to have this on repeat. I know that you have this technique on your YouTube channel, which we're going to share also in the show notes. So this is really powerful. I'm going to be doing it over and over. And really, I'm really grateful for you to be so generous to share this technique with everyone.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so powerful. Oh.
Some people, they would feel that it is maybe not gone, but less. Then maybe nothing changed, or it's more. That means they're feeling it more clearly, distinctly. In that case, run the procedure again. You may need to run a series through. You may need to do a number of them. The person who came to me on the phone in a panic attack took 20 minutes because we did, I think, 3 runs through. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you can tell it doesn't take that much time. Yeah. That's why it was 20 minutes. We had to do a few passes.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for your time today. For all of your brilliance that you shared.
Oh, shucks.
And I'm supposed to ask you if you're married.
Why, you interested? No, I'm not married.
That was on my notes.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Lawrence. I really appreciate you. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to leave with our audience before we say goodbye and and we want to tell them how to find you.
Well, alrighty then. My website is somatics, and I'll spell that, somatics.com. S as in Sam, O, M as in Max, A, T as in Tom, ICS, somatics.com. And on every page of the website, you'll find a contact link and a little clickable animated envelope at the bottom of the pages that'll open up email to me. That's an easy way for people to reach me. See if there's anything else about that. Now that'll be the opening. Should I give the YouTube channel or just let that be from the notes? Easier from the notes, I think.
Yeah, it's easier from the notes, but if you want to go for it, if you want to share it.
Okay. Well, the YouTube channel is Lawrence, my name, Lawrence, numeral 9, gold, no spaces.
Fabulous.
I took 9 in my middle name position because I wasn't assigned a middle name. I don't have one. And 9 is a very interesting number. If you add 9 to any number, like 4, it gets you 13. And if you add the 1 and 3 of 13, it takes you back to 4.
Yeah.
This is true of all numbers. On the other hand, if you multiply a number by 9, like 4, 36, 3 and 6 is 9. Any number multiplied by 9 gives a result that when added to itself, the numbers are added, gives you 9. So 9 is a kind of a transparent number. Things can be themselves on one hand, but they're all reflections or versions of 9 when they're put in relationship to 9 rather than added to it.
Wow.
So I took that as my middle initial, numeral 9.
Wow.
Gold.
Fascinating. Wow. So any last nuggets of wisdom for our audience?
Yes, be well and eat your vegetables.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for tuning in today on the Thought Leader podcast. We are grateful for your time. Leave us any comments on how this helped you or served you today, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lawrence. Bye.
That's it for today's episode of the Thought Leader Podcast. Visit our Thought Leader Talks YouTube channel to browse all episodes and show notes and to continue the conversation. We love to hear your feedback, ideas, and success stories. And don't forget to subscribe for more expert information, insights, and inspiration. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Thought Leader Podcast with another relevant conversation you don't want to miss.